What is going on, YouTube? Fascinating graveyard. Today we are at the All Souls Cemetery here in Chardon, Ohio, and I'm here to visit the grave of one Hector Boyardee, commonly referred to millions and millions of people around the world as Chef Boyardee, that kind face sitting on millions and millions of cans of ravioli, spaghetti, all that high sodium goodness. And let me tell you something, my mother was a horrendous cook. She would be in the kitchen with this weird bubbling cauldron of some form of stew with an animal that once lived soaking in some kind of liquid nonsense. And she expected me to eat this. And I said, listen, lady, no. Chef Boyaredee's got my back. And I would open up that can, and I lived to escape another day of eating my mother's cooking. I love my mother, but oh boy, that cooking. Who burns spaghetti? My mother does. I love you, Mom. Let's talk really quickly about Chef Boyaredee's life. He was an Italian immigrant, came to the United States when he was a young man. By the time he was 18 years old, he was the head chef at the Plaza Hotel in New York City, and he cooked and catered events for many famous people, and the president, Woodrow Wilson, loved his food. How about that? A little bit later, he decided to leave his position at the hotel and open up a restaurant in Cleveland, Ohio. It was called Giardino d'Italia. My Italian is horrible, but that's translated into English as the Italian garden. Now, that was a very risky venture back then because Italian food is really popular now, but it wasn't really that popular back then. So he opens up his restaurant and people loved his food. They loved his food. They really especially loved his pasta sauce. And people were always constantly badgering him, hey, you know, how do you make this pasta sauce? Why don't you sell it? You should, you know, bottle it and all this and that. So one day he got some recycled milk bottles, and he had a customer that was a long distance truck driver. And he says, hey man, I know this sounds weird, but can I give you some of my pasta sauce in these recycled milk bottles? I guess back in the days, the health department really wasn't much of a thing. So we could do stuff like that back then, the good old days. So he gives the truck driver his pasta sauce and milk bottles, and he leaves and goes on his route. He comes back, and Chef Boyaredee's like, hey, how did people like it? He said they loved it. They loved it. He says, I think we have something here. So he starts selling basically to go cook it yourself at home kits. He sells these boxes. It just basically has dried pasta, his tomato sauce, and some Parmesan cheese. That's all it is. And it got to the point where he was selling more of those to-go home kits than actually of his own food. So in 1928, him with his two brothers, they decided to open up a factory to sell, that's it, just let's sell these to-go home kits. And they became very, very successful with it. And then, of course, World War II comes and rears its ugly head, and you have many, many men and women overseas. Many, many men, they need to be fed. The U.S. government, they approach Mr. Boyardee, and they say, listen, we need you to cook food, MREs, for our men and women in the armed forces overseas. They move to Milton, PA. They buy this huge factory, and they just start cranking out the MREs. Chef Boyardee was the nation's largest provider of MREs for the military during World War II. They were making upwards of 250,000 MREs a day. Chef Boyardee had 5,000 employees, and he was making a lot of money. Well, we defeated Hitler, thank God, because none of us are speaking German. And the boys and girls come back home, and of course, all of a sudden, his biggest customer, the United States government, is gone. So he has 5,000 employees, and his machines are stopped. His factory stopped. There's nothing doing. He's like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble over here. But thankfully, a company called American Home Products, they said, hey, listen, we'd like to buy your factory. We'd like to buy your factory. We'd like to start like canning and making the food. And they explained to him their business idea. We're going to take your face, take your name, which, by the way, he had to misspell his name on his own products because people didn't know how to say his name properly. So he had to spell it, you know, B-O-Y-A-R-D-E-E. So they purchased his business for $6 million. And they hired him as an advisor. And he would do commercials for them, and they used his likeness. And the rest is history. He did commercials up till around he was about 80 years old, and then he retired, and he lived to a grand old age of 87. A true American success story. Just by dumb luck, and I was coming to the cemetery here, this is Antones Smithona. He is the first Lithuanian. He was the Lithuanian president from 1919, April, to August of 1920, and then he became the president again in 1940. And then some guys came and took over the country, the Soviet Union thing, and they chased him out. He barely escaped, him and his family with his lives. He escaped to Germany, and then I guess he got some kind of political asylum here in the United States. He died in a tragic house fire. Some say that the Soviet Union, the KGB guys, came here and killed him. Who knows? Who knows? But rest in peace to Mr. Smithona. Okay. So here is the final resting place of Chef Hector Boyardee right here. 1897 to 1985. Look at that. Yeah, I could say that people would not be able to pronounce that name, which is why he had to spell it that way. And he is interred in this beautiful mausoleum along with his wife, Helen. And, you know, even though he had nothing really to do with the manufacturing of his food after 1946, like I said, he stayed with the company, and he was the face of Chef Boyardee for many, many years. So rest in peace to the Boyaredees, just one of those great American stories. Okay, guys, I'm on that large, fascinating graveyard. Please hit that notification bell. It'll let you know when I upload, of course. And as we pass by the former president of Lithuania, who was buried alongside with his wife, Sophia Smithona, God rest both of their souls as well. Okay, guys, I'm out of here. Rest in peace to all those who are interred in this beautiful mausoleum. I'll catch up with you guys later.